stood in front of the mirror and gasped. A cute guy was looking at me from the reflection. It was just a pity that it was makeup. That was okay. Very soon I would have a sex change operation. I would finally be a real boy. Even as a child, I realized that I was not like other girls. At the age of 9, when they liked dolls and ruffles, I loved to climb trees and play war games. I preferred to hang out with boys, but they never accepted me into their company. You see, they're not friends with snotty girls. But even though I looked like a girl on the outside, I didn't feel like I was in my own body on the inside. I didn't know what was wrong with me until I watched a show about transsexuals, people who changed their gender. At that moment, it dawned on me. I was a boy in a girl's body. I wanted to share it with someone, but there were no friends, and I was afraid of my parents' reaction. What if they wouldn't accept me? At an early age, I was adopted by a couple of men, Derek and Jean. They were kind, caring, but they always wanted to raise a girl. And I didn't know how my dads would react to the news. Their beloved daughter wanted to become a guy. And what if they got angry? So I didn't say anything. I tried to wear boyish clothes, played soccer, and secretly dreamed of the day when I would turn 18 and change my sex. But a week before my 18th birthday, my dads called me in to discuss a future party. They said that they had prepared a special surprise for their princess, an expensive brand dress and a spa with friends. This could only happen in a nightmare. I stopped them abruptly. They should know now. Come what may, I blurted out, I want to be a guy. My heart was pounding with excitement, and my palms were sweating. My parents were silent for a long time and glared at me. Would they be angry? But suddenly they took me in their arms. If you feel better in a man's body, then we accept your choice, Derek said. I definitely didn't expect this. I immediately felt so relieved that I had finally made a coming out. Jean smiled and said that they would sign me up for a sex change operation. I felt dizzy with joy. I felt like the happiest person in the world. But then Jean added that only if I didn't change my mind before I was 18. Damn. Okay, I could be patient. There was only a week left. My parents woke me up early in the morning. I opened my eyes with difficulty, and they said, smiling, that I was in for a surprise. My dad suddenly handed me a set of clothes, men's t-shirt and trousers. I didn't understand anything. And then Derek said, from now on, you're going to go to a boys' school. It's time to join the male company since you decided to change your sex. God, was this a dream? Soon I would feel in my body? As soon as my parents left, I wrapped an elastic bandage around my chest and, disguising myself as a boy, put on the clothes they had given to me. Inside, everything was fluttering. At the new school, a teacher met me and took me to class. I was bursting with anticipation. If only everything went smoothly. My classmates immediately clung to me and began to ask me, where did I come from and why did I transfer to them? The question was confusing. I tried to think of something to say. Well, don't be silent. I blurted out that I had transferred because I wanted to study at a better school. Oh my god, what was this nonsense? But my classmates laughed approvingly. I was suddenly relieved. I was accepted into the company for the first time. My classmates asked my name, and I immediately blurted out, Simone. Damn. I quickly corrected, Simon. What about you? The guys started talking about themselves. That was close. And then I noticed one of the guys staring at me. He looked formidable, tall, scowling, and looking incredulous. My throat was dry with excitement. What if he realized I was a girl? But then the bell rang and the guy turned away. The lesson went quickly and the guys decided to give me a mini tour of the school. Laughing merrily, I walked down the hall. But when I looked at the schedule, my legs gave out. The next session was physical education. I needed a gym suit there. Together with my classmates, I went to the locker room and suddenly they took out their swimming trunks. I imagined them undressing in front of me and my cheeks were already burning. No, I would definitely get caught. I said I had to go to the bathroom and quickly ran out of the locker room. I sat in the booth, feeling terribly embarrassed until the bell rang. I needed to get used to this. I would be a real guy soon. At the lesson, the gym teacher immediately sternly asked why I didn't change my clothes. I fell into a stupor, not knowing what to say. As luck would have it, my throat felt right. I coughed, and the gym teacher looked at me even more sternly. My skin and crawled. He was going to make me change. And then I got an idea. I replied in a hoarse voice that I had recently had a sore throat, but the gym teacher grunted in disbelief. Did he believe it? Take your gym suit for the next lesson, he snapped and sent me to the bench. Oh God, that was close. As soon as the lesson was over, I rushed back to the classroom, but right at the entrance, I ran into some guy. This was the classmate who stared at me in the first lesson. He narrowed his eyes and said softly that he knew I wasn't sick. A lump rose in my throat. It was over. He found me out, and suddenly the guy smiled. I didn't know how to swim either, and I kept forgetting my gym suit. The guy introduced himself. His name was Sid, and offered to sit at his desk. He was very cool and positive, and I quickly relaxed with him. And when the conversation turned to a party at his house, Sid asked if I wanted to hang out with them. I was overjoyed. I was invited to a party for the first time, so that evening I stood outside Sid's house. Sid and I spent most of the evening dancing and having fun like real buddies. I thought I'd known him all my life, and the girls from the next school joined us. One of them, Nura, kept looking at me. I even thought that I was dirty in something, and Nura suddenly smiled coquettishly. Does such a handsome guy have a girlfriend? I almost choked. What? Before I could think of an answer, Sid waved on me, offering to play beer pong on a wish. I wanted to say no, but then all the guys started whistling, supporting me. I could hear their screams. My heart was pounding. I had never played before, but Sid smiled. Why are you so scared like a girl? This phrase brought me out. No way! I would show them all now. But it was harder to play than I thought. Sid almost always hit the target, and I stayed behind with my accuracy. And in the end, I lost. Sid smiled maliciously and made a wish. Kiss Nura. He pushed me toward the girl, and I froze when I saw her close her eyes, waiting for a kiss. Okay, well, you've always wanted to be a guy. This is normal for them. I made up my mind, and just as I leaned over to Nura, I shuddered. No, I didn't want to kiss her. I didn't like girls. I immediately ran out into the street. Sid shouted something after me, but I ignored him. I always wanted to be a guy, but now, when I needed to kiss a girl, I was overcome with doubts. What the hell was wrong with me? I came to school depressed. It seemed that all my classmates would laugh at me because of yesterday, or they wouldn't accept me into the company at all. But the guys pretended that nothing had happened. Only Sid, at recess, said thoughtfully that he wanted to talk, but not here. My stomach clenched. He wanted nothing to do with me? Sid took me to the roof of the school. We sat on the edge, and he said quietly that he didn't care about my orientation, sex, or gender. Anyway, even if I were an alien, that's not why he was friends with me. I was just a wonderful person. He spoke so sincerely that I shed tears. You really don't care who I am, Sid? He smiled and put his hand on my shoulder. Main thing is that you accept yourself. His words echoed in my head. I asked softly, will you come to my birthday party? I already considered Sid my friend. We talked constantly, and I couldn't imagine a day without him. I turned 18 a couple of days later. We celebrated in a cafe. Sid, I, and a few other classmates had fun together, talking, joking, even singing karaoke. At some point, a waitress came up to us. I noticed that she kept looking at Sid in a strange way and trying to touch him. And at the end of the evening, she suddenly asked for his phone number. Suddenly, I felt angry. I immediately wanted to take Sid away. What's the matter with me? I couldn't sleep all night and thought about what had happened. Why was I angry? This feeling was new to me. In the morning, my parents woke me up with congratulations. The day you dreamed of has finally arrived. Today you will become a boy. I forced a smile and quickly changed my clothes. But for the first time, I didn't want to wear my usual men's clothes. My parents took me to the clinic, and all the way I couldn't get rid of the stupid doubts. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Before the operation, they brought me the documents where I had to sign. I raised my pen and felt something jump in my chest. What nonsense! You've been dreaming about this all your life. Go ahead! I signed them quickly. There was no turning back. They put me on the operating table and began to prepare me for sex change operation. Somehow I didn't think about waking up as a boy and finally being happy. After all, I was already happy with Sid. I always felt like myself. I closed my eyes and imagined his face. He was so beautiful that I wanted to kiss him. Oh my god, a sudden realization hit me. I was so in love with Sid. I exploded in shock and shouted for the operation to be stopped. I wanted to stay as a girl. The next day, the first class was physical education. When the teacher asked where the new guy was, I let out a determined breath and walked around the corner in a women's swimsuit with my hair down and no makeup. Everyone gasped when they saw me. I was a little worried that the guys would get angry, but they smiled. They said they were interested in me as a person, regardless of gender. I turned to the confused Sid. Thank you for helping me accept who I am. I always dreamed of becoming a boy, thinking that this was the only way I would be accepted. But Sid showed that this was not the case. Thanks to him, I've realized that in order to accept myself, you don't have to change. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.
I was preparing for a very important performance. Today, my acting talent would finally be noticed. But then that stinker Claire pulled off my beard and ran out of the dressing room. Why did she need a beard? Was she going to play a man? She was such a tomboy. I ran after her, but before I could, she locked the door in my face. No, not now! I pounded the door for an hour and a half, but no one heard me. It seemed to be over. Now I could forget about my dream. Since childhood, I wanted to become a great actor. I studied in a theater group and the teachers praised me well. But I could not imagine that I would end up in this boarding school. I was against it because they only took girls here. But I got here on acquaintance. The fact was that the local acting troupe was noticed by cool producers. This was my chance. And finally today, they came to the main rehearsal of our play Romeo and Juliet. If they liked our game, we would be invited to perform in a real theater, and then world fame would be just around the corner. I banged on the door for an hour and a half until the cleaning lady let me out. I immediately rushed backstage. What if I could make it to the final? But the entire troupe was already going home. Because of me, the show was cancelled. The girls immediately rushed to blame me for this. I always ended up a whipping boy because I was the only guy in school. Only the straight A student Sarah quietly said that the members of the commission would return for the next rehearsal. I still had a chance. I let out a sigh of relief, but then I remembered who had started it all. I was so angry, so I hurried to the principal. This was my mother. I would tell her everything. Let Claire be removed from the play for her outburst. From the first day of school, this hooligan had been harassing me. I didn't understand why she hated me so much. However, all the girls didn't really like me either. I was the only guy in the boarding school and so talented. They were just jealous of me. So as I walked down the hall, every girl felt that it was her duty to call me names. But I didn't care. I had only one goal in life. To become a famous actor. I just reached the principal's office when I heard someone crying on the other side of the door. I listened. It was Claire. How did she get ahead of me? Through her tears, she said that she was sorry about the disrupted rehearsal and that it was all due to the fact that I was harassing her. What a liar. I stormed into the office and shouted that Claire was lying. She locked me up on purpose. Mom gave us a tired look. She didn't believe in Claire and said that with her character, she wasn't likely to let herself be offended. But then she turned around and said that I was also no good. I came to complain instead of solving the problem. I felt hurt. Claire could also hear my mother telling me off. As a punishment, my mom sent Claire and me to clean up the auditorium. And we had to start right now. Back there, Claire and I got down to business in silence. I had so much to say, but Claire suddenly asked me to move the wardrobe. Okay, no problem. But as soon as I went to the wardrobe, it began to fall on me with a wild crash. I miraculously jumped out of the way. What are you doing? I shouted. But all Claire said was that with a broken arm, I probably wouldn't be able to act in the play. She slammed the door and left. Claire was completely out of her mind. I needed to find a new Juliet for the play. And someone who didn't want to beat me up with a wardrobe. After cleaning, I was sitting in the hallway thinking about how to displace Claire when I suddenly saw my classmate Sarah. I couldn't help but smile at the sight of her. Sarah was the only one of the girls who had always supported me. We started talking, and Sarah said I was lucky to be playing the lead role, but she was just Juliet's understudy. Exactly! Without thinking, I blurted out loud, so why don't you play Juliet instead of Claire? Sarah stared at me in disbelief. But then she added timidly that this was only possible if Claire didn't show up or lost her costume. Then she would need an understudy. Sarah, you're a genius! The next day, I snuck into an empty dressing room and started looking for the dress that Claire was supposed to play in. I would steal it. Claire wouldn't be able to go on stage, and Sarah would replace her. Soon I had the dress, and I ran to hide it behind the locker. On the way back, I looked out into the hall. The commission was already assembled. Today, everything would be perfect. I had already changed my clothes, but I couldn't resist looking into Claire's dressing room. She was frantically looking for her dress. Oh, how angry she was. But then Claire saw me at the door. She slowly came over and grabbed my shirt. Well, then I'll play Romeo. Take off your suit, she said. No way. I ran backstage as fast as I could, but Claire was not far behind. I was almost at the stage when Claire grabbed my wig and we fell to the floor. And then I realized that everything was too quiet. I looked around slowly. We were being watched by the commission and a full house. We were on stage. Before I could say anything, the curtain fell. A couple of minutes later, I was sitting backstage and couldn't believe it had ended like this. This time, everyone saw my failure. Just then, an enraged producer came backstage. He began to shout that this was the first time he had seen such disrespect for the audience. He added dryly that we had missed our chance. After that, he left. I couldn't believe it. Claire, it seemed, was also in shock. We ran out of desperation for the producer when suddenly we saw my mother in the hallway. What was she doing here? The next second, my mother was on her knees in front of him, begging him to give us one last chance, under her personal responsibility. Mom, I set her up, and she still wanted us to perform. The producer gave her a scornful look, but still chuckled. Okay, you have a week. I jumped with happiness, and immediately began to thank my mother fervently. Wouldn't have worked without you. The next day, all the girls at school pointedly did not communicate with me and Claire because of the disrupted performance. I had never cared about the lack of friends, but now I felt very lonely. I was standing by my locker when someone pushed me from behind. I turned around. It was Claire. What else do you want? But Claire suddenly blushed and said she wanted to offer me a temporary truce. In order not to spoil the performance, we needed to rehearse together. She had to be up to something. But on the other hand, the whole troupe suffered because of our quarrels. After that, Claire and I shook hands and agreed to meet in the auditorium after school. Let's see what kind of trap she's devised. But nothing happened on the next few rehearsals. It was as if Claire had been replaced. She didn't try to kill me with a wardrobe or even call me names. Moreover, with each rehearsal, I realized more and more that Claire was very talented. And how did I not notice that before? During one break, I asked Claire why she hated me. She frowned. She used to play all male roles, and the role of Romeo was her dream. And that's it? I suddenly blurted out that she was a great Juliet and a wonderful girl. And then Claire looked at me so tenderly. I looked into her big eyes for the first time. Her dress went so well with them. Stop, what was I thinking? That was Claire Tomboy. The day before the performance, we rehearsed until night. And then, suddenly, Claire dropped the script. I jumped up to help, and our hands touched. A shiver ran through my body. I looked into Claire's eyes. Our lips were so close. Suddenly, Sarah bursted into the room. Claire and I immediately pulled away. Sarah stared at us for a moment, then said I was a liar. I promised her of the role of Juliet, and now I was kissing Claire. I wanted to go to her, but Sarah shouted that she would not forgive me and ran away. Claire asked coldly, "You wanted to deprive me of the role of Juliet? So everything you've told me is just for your plan?" I began to make excuses that I wanted to do this earlier, before our rehearsals, before I knew how wonderful she was. But Claire gave me a scornful look and left without a word. I wanted to stop her, but I knew that now she would only send me away. As I watched her go, a hole opened in my chest. I couldn't sleep all night, and I came to the play terribly tired. I wanted to see Claire soon, but she didn't even say hello to me. Sarah was avoiding me too. As soon as the director and my mom noticed me, they immediately shouted that we did not dare doing anything today. Claire smiled blankly and said that she didn't care about me at all, so they could stop worrying. I looked out into the hall from behind the scenes. The commission looked at the stage expectantly. I felt a wild tension. My palms were sweating. The curtain opened, and the play began. Claire played the whole production just fine, but I couldn't concentrate. Time after time, looking at Claire made me sadder and sadder. What have I done? During the rehearsals, I got to know her from a different side, and I realized that Claire was not a tomboy. She was gentle and affectionate. Claire opened up to me, and I just messed it up. And then when it was time for my monologue, I couldn't say a word. I stood on the stage and knew that I had to finally speak. I took a deep breath and immediately warned the audience and the producer that my text would be different from the original one. Then I turned to Sarah, who was standing backstage, and publicly apologized. I behaved abominably when I promised her the part. Then I looked at Claire. My hands were shaking with fear, and I said that I was terribly sorry that I had offended her. And even if I didn't have any more chances, I wanted to say something. I think I'm in love, Claire. I'm sorry I realized this so late. The words echoed through the hall. There was a complete silence. The audience and the commission looked at each other in bewilderment. After an interminable minute, tears welled up in Claire's eyes. I thought I ruined everything, and suddenly, she kissed me. The audience bursted into applause. Immediately, I saw the producer slowly get up from his seat. My heart sank. He would say that it was a failure, and I could forget about my acting career. And suddenly the producer said that it was very cool and emotional. We were invited to perform at the theater. Really? After everything that happened, we got our chance to be famous still. Claire and I jumped for joy. I saw my mother in the hall, wiping away her tears and looking at me approvingly. I was smiling when Claire took my hand and whispered, "I think I like you too." And oddly enough, those words were more important to me than our invitation to the big stage. And then I think I understood what Shakespeare was trying to say in Romeo and Juliet. Warring people can still love each other and even change for the sake of their love. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you so much. I ran out of the apartment and rushed down the stairs with my suitcase. The short dress was about to pull up, and the high heels could make me break my legs. But the cops were already in the doorway. I ran into them on the stairs. I prayed they wouldn't find me out. One of them stopped and told me that such a cute girl has to get out of here as quickly as possible, and ran after the others to catch a dangerous criminal that is actually me. Gone. They didn't recognize me. I've been a guy named Joe for 20 years, but now I'm red-haired beauty Maria. And no, I didn't change my gender. In fact, my associates turned me into the cops, so I had to disguise myself. I jumped in the first cab to the station. An hour later, the train was taking me to a small town, where I planned to abscond with a suitcase full of money. I was sitting in the car and was already falling asleep when suddenly the controller appeared in the aisle. He stared at my fake passport for so long that the other passengers also started staring at me. I was sweating from the strain in that tight dress, but I tried to smile sweetly. Finally, the controller exclaimed that I looked like an actress. Even the mole on my cheek is the same. Of course I did. I copied her image. In the evening, I arrived in a backwoods town. As soon as I got off the train, a lanky man rushed to take my suitcase. I was ready to punch him, but then I realized that he was just trying to help a pretty lady. I just gave him the suitcase, and he immediately ran away. By the time I took my shoes off, the scumbag was gone already. It's all gone. All I had left was my makeup bag and a couple of dollars. For the first time in my life, I wanted to go to the police, but it was a bad idea. I had to spend the night at the train station. I was used to sleeping in different conditions, but now it was terribly uncomfortable. The wig kept slipping off, and some homeless people were pestering me half the night. In the morning, I immediately started looking for a job. I needed to get by while I was wanted. I went around all the auto repair shops, but looking at me, the owner said that such a beauty should go to the TV and not fix cars. By lunchtime, I gave up and went to an eatery to have a snack. I complained about my problems to the owner, and she advised me to go to work at the school. It was a mile away from town with accommodation. Like, there, a teacher was needed. Should I take up teaching lessons or sleep at the train station for another night? The choice was obvious. I hugged the woman goodbye and surreptitiously took the silver brooch from her as a souvenir. I couldn't resist, but it was all to disguise myself into a teacher. They always wear trinkets like that. An hour later, I was standing in front of the school gates. I was immediately confused by the barbed wire over the fence. The sign said it was a military school for boys. Well, at least it wasn't a prison. I passed the interview without straining. A couple of winking was enough to get the deal in the bag. But when the principal asked me about my education, I had to use my imagination. I told him that I had just finished my studies abroad and that my diploma had not yet been sent. And this fool believed it. I was put on probation. So from that moment, I got a job in a nice small room. I'm going to stay here for a couple months until the investigation subsides, and then I'm off. The principal also promised to give me a new class. And why is he trying so hard? Did the old man decide to hit on me? God forbid. I'll have to hide from him as well. Like cops aren't enough for me. I terribly worried before the first class. What if they realize that I don't know anything about literature? I only read comics. But what a relief it was when none of the students came. I was about to watch a movie when I heard the principal's voice.
I had to find these fools, still having my high heels on. It turned out that they were assembling an assault rifle outside. I snatched the weapon from them and quickly assembled it, telling a wild story about soldier spirit that settled in the rifle. Meanwhile, a guy in a sports suit came up to us. He turned out to be the local PE teacher, Tom. He looked at me with such a nasty smile that I wanted to hit him. Gosh, why is everyone at this school so interested in seeing me? I'm hiding from the cops, by the way. I don't want to go to jail. The next day, the same macho guy came to my class, and in front of all the students, he said that I was the most beautiful teacher in the world, and he was asking me out. And he did it so cockily, as if he expected me to fall at his feet of joy. No way, I said I didn't date men. His eyes widened. What the heck did I say? The kids just burst out laughing. Well, it was embarrassing, but my classes were just awesome. Once I remade Romeo and Juliet and told them that it was a real story, and it happened in a distant province with my aunt. That's where I learned how to assemble assault rifles when all the swords were taken away. The boys were delighted. They learned poems by heart. I think I was starting to enjoy working as a teacher. But Tom couldn't calm me down. In the dining room, he got me a heart-shaped cake in front of other teachers. This was so frustrating. I dropped it on the floor and blurted out to Tom that I wasn't some woman to give me darn cakes. Tom turned red and stormed out of the dining room, shouting that I would regret it. I was about to conduct the first test. I had already photoshopped my diploma and started reading a lot of books. As a result, I managed to somehow concoct the test using the internet. The day before, I was so worried that I couldn't sleep. I had to sleep in a woman's nightgown for secrecy. And this isn't very convenient, actually. And then I heard a knock on the door. I jumped right up, put on a wig and a dress. I opened the door and saw my student. In tears, he told me that Tom, the PE teacher, was trying to persuade him to set me up during the test. The kid was supposed to give me the money, and the other guy was supposed to take a picture of it. Tom was going to send these photos to his parents and to the newspaper. I was furious. No one can accuse me of something I didn't do. I burst into PE class this morning. Tom was so happy to see me until I twisted him with my signature move. Learn, kids. I only let go when I felt my fake breast slide down to my navel. Man, I hope it didn't notice. I had to get out of there before the guy came to. But from the moment on, I was on tenterhooks. What if he figured it out and was going to turn me in? How terrified I was when a cop showed up at school the next day. They gathered all the teachers and gave them flyers with a photo of me still being Joe. Tom looked at the flyer for a very long time, and then he glanced at me. Goodbye, kids. I have to get out of here. I had just made that decision when the principal caught me in the hall and asked for an urgent conversation. In the office, the old man began to talk nonsense that he had applied for a competition on my behalf in order to receive a grant in the future. So that's why he was so nice to me. He wanted to embezzle money with my help. No way. I didn't participate in this anymore. I don't want to spend my life wearing women's clothes and hiding from the cops. I gently gave the principal the heave-ho and left. I wouldn't work at that school anymore anyway. Bloody Tom is going to turn me in for sure. I had to run away as soon as possible. An unpleasant surprise was waiting for me in the room. Big Tom was standing there holding my passport. Things were scattered around. Heck, I tried to say something, but Tom pulled off my wig and handed me the flyer with my face on it. There was no point in denying it. But I begged him not to turn me in because I really loved his job and I wanted to start my life with a clean slate. But Tom just stared at me. In his eyes, I was a pathetic criminal. He threw my wig and left. The cop showed up at school again that night. I thought they came for me, but they walked past me into the principal's office. He was detained for financial fraud. What a relief. So I had time to convince Tom not to turn me in. Just when that thought appeared in my head, Tom came up to me. It turned out that he was delighted with the way I knocked him out. You bet. This is a secret trick of the Italian mafia. He promised he wouldn't turn me in if I told him the technique. Well, you can do anything for peace of mind, right? I was sick and tired of trembling at every step. I wanted to be a teacher, not a runaway criminal, but it didn't work. I was turned in by the cafe's owner for a goddamn brooch, a darn heirloom. I wish 100 times that I hadn't wanted this trinket. The police came to the school again. They came in the classroom and tied me up right in front of the kids. At that last second, I pulled off my wig and told the students the truth. I couldn't let the cops do it for me. And here I am with my 3rd month in prison. I haven't changed my mind about becoming a teacher, and when I'm out, I will definitely find a job at the school. My former students have not forgotten me. They visit me and even bring parcels. I can't wait to get out of here. And then I promise to quit with the crimes and women's dresses.